And where are we going to put our money when it comes to the AFC South? We've been talking about it all week long. So, Chelsea, if you look at the division odds in the AFC South, the Texans, again, the favorites at even money. The Jags are plus 275. The Colts are plus 325. The Titans are 9-1. So you can bet on a team. You can bet win totals. God knows you can bet on anything. How many kilos will wash up today in the Keys? If you want to find that online, I'm sure we can get it. What is a bet or two that you've been looking at?
I think before we go into our favorite bets, we probably need to have the divisional conversation again. Because have we decided who we think is going to win this division? Because I think the bottom line for us is that normally we don't like taking favorites, and the Texans, even money, it feels like a very short price on a team that's still very young and still has a ton of volatility that I think that may be in store. CJ Stroud certainly looks like the real deal, but can we bank on him to have another incredible season where he put up these fantastic numbers, 23 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions? It feels like something has to give there. But still, they look like the most talented team on paper in the AFC South. So how do we reconcile that? Because if we were just picking a winner, I would say probably the Texans. But is this price good enough for you to want to actually take the Texans to win the AFC South?
I don't know. I go back and forth because I really like the Texans. And I've been saying all week, I don't know if I like them at even money. I don't know if I like them at even money. But it's not minus money. I kind of like the Jags quite a bit. I think the Jags are undervalued a little bit. Remember, 2 years ago, they were the favorites in this division. There's a lot to like there. But ultimately, I keep going back to that nagging feeling that, Michael, it's not minus money. Maybe it's not the value that you want. But the Texans are far and away, I think, the best team. I think they can improve. They have improved themselves during the offseason. It is difficult to win the division in back-to-back years, but maybe I'm switching it up now. I keep going back to Houston. Maybe even money isn't so bad. I'm always wary of these teams that everyone is on, and everyone loves the Texans this year. They're 9-1 to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think value is always relative. So, take that into consideration here. Mm-hmm. But I was thinking about this. Of all the teams in the AFC South, I still feel like the Texans have the highest floor. So, if they don't perform as high as the expectations are, that's fine. But some of these other teams have pretty low floors. Like, we saw the product that the Jags were putting out on the football field at the final stretch of the season. Their only win after starting the season 8-3 was against the Carolina Panthers, the very bad Carolina Panthers. So we have seen how the Jags kind of close out games. And I know Trevor Lawrence was hurt. He was playing extremely banged up. But still, they have some issues on the offensive line. That could happen again. Then you look at the Colts. Anthony Richardson is extremely exciting to watch. But also, I'm not sure if he is the sure thing because, number one, he hasn't had a full rookie season. And number two, there's some volatility built into the type of player that he is, that we're not sure if the decision-making is there. Sometimes with running quarterbacks, you can get hurt as well, as we've already seen. And then you look at the Titans, who have Will Levis, who is very much an unknown at this point still. So I think of all these teams, the Texans, they have the highest floor, and maybe that's why you can bet on them to win the South. Not because of their potential, but simply because they feel like the more consistent team out of the AFC South.
Well, when it comes to player props, the one Texans bet that I'm definitely on is I'm going to go over 850.5 rushing yards for Joe Mixon. That's at even money. And we know how good that Texans passing game is. They added Stephon Diggs in the offseason. And the early reports are, of course, it's the offseason, he's okay. He's happy. And the reason why I mention that is that he's so mercurial that with Tank Dell and Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz, there are going to be a lot of guys getting touches on that Texans offense. He's going to want his as well. But I also think, too, that passing game will open things up for the entire offense. And Joe Mixon is a guy who averaged, over the course of his career, went more than 1,000 yards last season when he was with the Bengals. I can't believe this is only 850.5. And remember last year, the Texans had only one offensive lineman who played all 17 games. So that O-line is healthier. That Texans offense is going to be balanced and difficult to stop. You really can't focus on the passing game or the running game. I think this is way too low for Joe Mixon. I'm going over.
Yeah, and also he doesn't have to play in the AFC North anymore. Like, imagine having to face those run defenses every single divisional game. It feels like a much easier and palatable defense to go against the AFC South. As far as player props go, I'm going to bank on Will Levis this year. I know I said that he's kind of a volatile pick here, but I'm going to take him to go over his passing yardage prop. It's set at 3,375 yards, depending on where you get it. He had 1,808 passing yards in just 9 games last season. He is the starter now. Last year was kind of a question. We are still kind of waiting to see for Ryan Tannehill if he was going to give us something good on the field. But now, not only does Will Levis have full reign of the offense, it's now a passing offense. The offense is no longer predicated on Derrick Henry in the run game. It's Brian Callahan that's come to town, and I think all eyes will be on the passing game. And also, they have huge upgrades of wide receiver. No longer is it Starbucks baristas running around and DeAndre Hopkins. It is Calvin Ridley. It's Tyler Boyd. I know D-Hop is starting the season on the injured list, but still, he will be back at some point. It is a non-surgical injury. Plus, huge upgrades on the offensive line. J.C. Latham is looking great in camp, and Lloyd Cushenberry comes in after signing a big deal at center. And plus, if you look at this number, if you look at the numbers last year, it puts him in between Geno Smith and Gardner Minshew. Gardner went for 3,305 in just 13 games started. I feel like this is a gettable number for Will Levis. So let's go Will Levis, Titans quarterback, over his passing yardage prop, 3,375.
Since we're on quarterbacks, I got one more. Trevor Lawrence, over 3,775 and a half yards. It's minus 110. Last year, he threw for more than 4,000 yards. And remember, he did this despite being injured for the last, 6 games of the season when the Jags went 1-5. And I think you're getting a discount here just because the Jags lost Calvin Ridley. And I understand how good he is. I understand that is the number one target on most teams and was last year. But this is still a talented receiving core with Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk and Brian Thomas Jr., or BTJ, as Lord called him yesterday, which I love. So he signed that massive contract in the offseason. And throughout his career, he has been right there on the cusp of taking that next step and being amongst the elite quarterbacks in the NFL this season. If he stays healthy, I think he does that. And also, he's got a head coach in Doug Peterson who has experience in running offenses where they spread the football around. You don't necessarily have to have that Pro Bowler, that go-to guy to have a good receiving core, especially when you have a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence who can spread the ball around. We know he can. That line is back together. They have an issue with run protection, or at least opening lanes for running backs, but they're pretty good at pass protecting. I expect a bounce-back year for Trevor Lawrence. Let's go over 3,775 and a half yards at BetMGM.